I'm going to go ahead and call the January 3rd, 2024 meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, let's begin with the roll call, beginning with Commissioner Mike Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
I am Vicki Claus. I'm here. And Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
We are all present and accounted for. Public comment for an agenda item. We have Mr. Joe Herring. Please step up to the
Welcome,
podium.
Joe. Morning, Commissioners. Happy New Year to everybody.
You as well.
Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 on Fifth Street. We have 4 rezones on the agenda today. All of them went 9-0 at the Planning Commission for rezone. 2 had some public comments, but they were more on concerns on what was happening. Nobody really spoke, I don't think, in opposition to anything. 3 of them I am the applicant agent. 1 of them I am the owner. So I'm here to answer any questions.
They went 8-0 with 1 absent.
8-0, 1 absent.
Okay.
Like 9 of them. So when those cases come up, if you have questions,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Administrative business. Do we have administrative business we would like to address today? Mark, we'll begin with you.
Commissioners, I don't have anything unless the board has questions or other comments that I'll leave it to that.
We're definitely having our attorney visit about Flatlands on the 18th. Is that the right date?
17th.
17th. That's all confirmed?
Yes.
And what day is Commissioner Culberson going to Topeka?
The 11th and the 17th.
So you'll be gone for that meeting. And the 17th is a meeting that we should probably all try to go.
That's on the Veterans Bill.
That's
11th is LAVTR. 11th is a Thursday, so it's not an issue.
Okay.
But if we-
17th is a Wednesday.
If we wanted to attend the one that's on the Wednesday, we would need to change
we
our
would need
meeting
to change
date.
our meeting date that week if we needed to go. House Bill 2036.
I think having our attorney come, it was difficult to get that scheduled on the 17th. So if you're looking to reschedule that, that might push that out
Okay.
a few weeks.
All right. Well, what time is the committee meeting out?
9:30 in the morning, I think.
Well, I got some concerns about that bill. I mean, I think we need to have written testimony, and I also think we need to have a written impact statement on that bill. The concerns I have with that bill, the past behavior of the state kind of indicates future behavior. I'm afraid if the state does pay this, it could turn out like the business machinery tax when they were going to cover it for 10 years to the counties, and they only covered it for 6 months. Then I have a problem with that bill because it doesn't have income limits or property value limits. I also have a concern that, I really think the Homestead Act should be increased, and that would cover everybody. This doesn't cover everything. Everybody needs tax relief. And another one of my concerns, like I said, the Homestead Act is not keeping up with our appraisals and with inflation. And I think we could fix all this by just increasing the Homestead Act. And also, and I don't have a problem if the state wants to exempt their portion that they receive of this property tax, that's fine. But I just don't think I'm just concerned that this is going to shift the taxes on other people because the price of doing business is not going down. I'm just got some real concerns that this is going to raise taxes on everybody that doesn't qualify for this.
Well, one thing too on this, I still whether it's the bills that you've talked about, Doug, something like that. I don't know why they make us the middleman. I still don't understand why the state itself doesn't handle this from start to finish and leave the counties and cities out of it. I don't see why any reason to involve us in this. They could set this up.
You've been around as long as I
know.
have, and you've seen how the state has shifted things to the counties.
That's my concern.
And we see these graphs of how the property tax have increased. Absolutely right, because that's when they drop business machinery, mortgage filing fees, LAVTR, city county highway sharing money.
$12 million of our county budget is state unfunded mandates.
Exactly.
Most of those they started out paying, and then they just stopped paying it.
Right. Well,
That's
I
the
just think
problem.
we need written testimony, if you're going to be there to speak, that we all are in agreement on this bill and our concerns with this bill.
Could we do like we did on some of the other pieces of legislation, could we do like a letter?
That's what
That's what he's talking about, Mike.
And I'll give the representative his due. He did change the bill. He made it so that subsidies come back to the counties that are highly impacted, and he says that there's a provision that could be added to make the entire thing go away if they didn't fund it. So I'll give him credit for that. However, I think our letter should say that the proper way of funding this is under the Homestead Act. If the state is going to give a benefit, then the state of Kansas should fund the benefit. They shouldn't come to the local governments and take their property tax revenues that we use for infrastructure and services and so many things and take that revenue. The bill that was passed last year did
have income limits and property value limits.
So I don't know, we don't have a copy of that bill, but maybe we could have a letter saying we think a bill similar to what was passed last year can be supported, but we have reservations, and I'm not going to say necessarily I 100% oppose his bill, but I just think we had an avenue to address this.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, and a lot of people, and my other concern is people are saying our appraisals are out of whack or out of control because people are overpaying for houses. Well, if you're going to move here and you're going to buy a house and you're not going to pay any taxes on it, I'm sure you can overpay a little bit for it, and then that's going to put your neighbor's house at a higher appraisal.
And how much has to be made up for in other revenue streams to even address at the local level this issue?
But commissioners, I think we've expressed over time, the commission has expressed over time a lot of concerns with the proposed legislation, and I think it's pretty clear that the county commission believes that if anything were to move forward, it should stay under the Homestead Act, which the state administers, not local government, because we all know that by local government, they mean the county. It would fall to us to administer it because we collect the property taxes. So then even we would be responsible for refunding not just our portion, but the other taxing entities' portions locally, not the state. And so the Homestead Act, I think, is the way to go. But some of the things that we've discussed in the past, and the commissioners just brought up, is there's no income limit on the proposed legislation. There's no house value limit. So homes that are valued over in excess of $1 million, which we know we have here in the county, and the folks who live in there who are veterans that we know we have here in the county would pay no property tax. Well, local government is funded a big portion on property taxes. The state government is not. So when they start talking about waiving these things, like you had mentioned that they could waive their own property tax, well, they only levy 1.5 mil levy. And then they exempt the schools from this. So the schools, their levy that they levy for the schools would also be a problem. But for us alone, just at the county's perspective as far as impact goes, to make up what we would lose in property taxes, and again, I'm on the very conservative side, somewhere between $2 and $3 million we would lose in property tax just at the county. I'm not taking into consideration what the cities would lose or the schools. But the $2 million, let's just say, since we collect 1% sales tax, to offset that, because I think the claim has been made that the positive impact to our economy by people moving here would offset what we would lose. Well, that would take 1%. At 1%, we would need $200 million in increased retail sales to collect $200 million in retail sales to collect $2 million in sales tax. Now, we only get to keep half of that 1 cent, actually a little less than half. So really, for us, for it to be a break even, it would need to be $400 million in increased retail sales. And I know that's an extreme example, but it's an example for us. If we were to replace that lost revenue fully with sales tax, which I think is what the representative is proposing, that the increase in our economy would offset the cost. It can't. It just can't. It's not feasible. There's no data that supports that claim. But we have the data that supports our claim that this would impact us to the tune between $2 and $3 million. We have that data. It came from the Veterans Administration directly on the numbers that we have here. And then something else I think is important, that because, again, we get beat up that we don't support veterans, when obviously we do. But the commission and the county and the other taxing entities in general are here to represent all the citizens, which is why we think the Homestead Act is the way to go, because that applies to everybody who has a disability, not just a special group of people. And it treats all citizens equally and doesn't carve out this special group who gets special treatment or preferential treatment. And another thing to take in mind, in the military, disability ratings are given out differently than they are for the civilian world. And one thing I found out, and I'm a veteran, but one thing I found out that up until about 3 years ago, sleep apnea was considered a 100% disability. And the reason that is because you can no longer serve in a combat-related field if you have sleep apnea. So it's considered a 100% disability. That doesn't mean I can't come to work, because I do have sleep apnea, by the way. That doesn't mean I can't come to work and work a regular job. It just means I can't serve in a combat area. So scar tissue, knee replacements, even kidney, or not kidney, but appendix, those are considered disabilities when you have those in the military, whereas in the civilian world, we don't count it. So I think that the representative would have you believe that this is applying to people who have been combat wounded in some way, but that's not the only people who are impacted by the way the legislation is currently proposed. And that's why there's such a big percentage of people out there in Leavenworth County, Geary County, and Riley County specifically, have a large percentage of their people who would be positively impacted by this bill as proposed. But then that impacts everybody else who isn't a veteran negatively. And that's the concerns that we have and why we think.
One thing else on that, everyone knows I was a law enforcement for over 20 years. I've got a lot of law enforcement friends that are disabled. And I think if you're going to look at something like that, what about, you open the door, what about first responders? What about other people that are disabled too? You've got to make this fair across the thing. Everyone knows my dad's a retired colonel, served 30-something years, proud of him, got wounded in Vietnam. But when you look at the big picture, you've got to make sure this is fair for everybody. The easiest thing, and we've said it, Commissioner Smith said it, everyone on the table said it, Mark, you've said it, is Topeka, handle it. You've got to surplus, handle it.
So could we have Mr. Lawfrey prepare us a letter to go to the committees?
I think we should. And I think one of the things we also, just kind of with what Mr. Lawfrey just brought up, with the how much revenue sales tax-wise would have to be collected to offset the bill, is a general rule. There's 102 other counties
They'll get to subsidize it.
that would not have the benefit of the offset that is available to the three counties that have been mentioned. And think about what has to be generated to offset in revenue that loss of revenue to those and to those counties as well. I mean,
Even at the state level, they obviously collect a lot more sales tax than we do. So at their rate, it's still, and because it's statewide, it would still be an astronomical amount of increased retail sales they'd have to see at the state level to offset what they're looking at waiving the way this current legislation is.
Well, it's just when you think about what would benefit the whole, like the constitutional amendment that caps property taxes that's sitting in the House waiting on action, would benefit the entire state as far as property owners and taxpayers. Just like Commissioner Cos said, when we're doing carve-outs, how do you pick the group? I mean, I think of we have maimed and disabled railroad workers that have been sitting there injured, and what's the difference? I mean, why don't they? They're very sympathetic people to take care of as well. And you've got many groups. We've got police officers. We've got firefighters. I mean, it just opens a Pandora's box. And let's deal with property tax relief that helps everyone.
And I think that the federal government needs to step up a little bit. I mean, I realize we have combat disabled veterans, especially those that are being impacted by PTSD, at levels that are just unprecedented. And it's based on, what they have had to experience while deployed overseas. And I understand that. It is awful. But we have a federal government that should be stepping up to the plate. This has trickled down all the way to the point where they want local governing bodies to address and fix a problem that actually should be addressed and fixed at the federal level. If there needs to be increases in compensation to our veterans via, by their disability determinations and investments in how much they get per month to compensate them for those illnesses that they're experiencing, or and then those that have been wounded by physical wounds. I mean, put it up there and talk to the federal legislators in Congress to say, what are you going to do about this?
Vicki, I think you make a good point. My dad had Agent Orange. I've heard about that, and he's totally disabled. Even though when you see him around the courthouse, you wouldn't think so, the way he goes 100 miles an hour. But I've always believed, I was in the time when Vietnam War was going on and my father's helicopter was shot down, and I got to hear that knock at the door. So I am so sympathetic. But I think it comes down to this. Federal government, you're not doing enough for the people you're sending off to war.
That's right.
Step up to the plate and quit pushing it down.
Right.
And it's these type of pieces of legislation are good intentions.
They're well intended.
Good intentions, but unintended consequences.
Right.
And that, because we all support veterans.
Absolutely.
So if Mr. Lofrey writes his letter and indicates we want it funded through the homestead, then the funding would come through the state.
And the homestead has not kept up on increases, property values or income.
And so the legislature
Right,
can
and that
address
needs to be
that.
fixed. They need to address and fix that.
Easy. They can fix that easy. And then another point was that Mr. Proctor was trying to there be more people moving here. I was unaware we was having a problem with people moving here. It seems like we've got all kinds of people wanting to move here that are willing to pay taxes.
And we see that in the report from Kansas City every year.
We're
leading in a lot of areas.
I mean, look at these rezones. There's a reason why these rezones.
Look at the housing permits for Leavenworth County.
And look down at Tonganoxie, the growth that's coming.
Right, in Baser.
Yeah, Baser
Yeah.
as well.
So I was unaware we were a rural opportunity zone.
Okay, well, just before we close this topic, I know that we have Commissioner Culbertson who is scheduled to testify on the 17th. We need to, if we choose to, we can have one other commissioner. I think that.
Well, as long as we send written testimony.
Oh, do we want a presence? Is what I'm saying. If we do,
we
then,
do want a presence as well.
Then which other commissioner would like to, or should we have?
Well, the 17th today, we're supposed to meet with the attorney.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, please.
I think that we need Mr. Culbertson to be present when the attorney for Flatlands, when that meeting occurs, because his district is directly impacted by it.
Right, that's what
So I think having that meeting with the attorney without him it would not be a good thing. So I don't know if we can try to reschedule it. Maybe we'll have to push it out. But
I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking to protect the county's interest, maybe it would be a good idea if I was not at that
Your
meeting.
district, I'd say it's your call.
Yeah, it's your call, Jeff.
Commissioners, if I might, as much as the legislature respects fellow local or fellow elected officials, specifically local elected officials on bills that impact them directly, I think the most impactful thing that the commission can do would be to have Commissioner Culberson attend the legislative hearing on the 17th, accompanied by submitted testimony, written testimony for the committee to consider, provide that to them in advance so that their staff can review it and have Commissioner Culberson present to answer questions with respect to it. With respect to the briefing that would be received by legal counsel, I'm certain that Commissioner Culberson can be filled in on any details that are required afterwards.
And as far as that meeting goes, I don't want to do anything to jeopardize the county's position on flat land and what's going on.
That'd just be in the executive committee. If he's going to update you, that'll be.
I think
was just asking if we
maybe.
wanted to pick another.
I
have
don't think so.
No, because I don't think
But I know
there's
that
going to
we
be
have-
more than one meeting.
I think there's
Here.
2 days that are scheduled for that.
Yeah,
On
16th
the
is
calendar.
pro and the 17th is against.
But I mean, even as it moves on, there'll be more opportunity.
Okay.
Should be.
So we're in agreement that Commissioner Culbertson will speak on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners,
And we'll submit
accompanied
our-
with the
You good
written.
with that, Jeff?
Well,
written-
it needs to be there before, so many
Right.
days before.
Right. There's a.
And the consensus of the board for me to take forward it's because still, when they originally presented this veterans bill and it was under the Homestead Act, we didn't have a problem with it. If the
No.
state's going to pay for it, then that's fine. But the latest proposal still puts it in jeopardy
Yeah.
that it's very possible that you're raising the taxes on the majority of people by
But I still
decreasing
think
taxes on a few.
that we need to be careful with whatever is proposed, even via the homestead. If there's a carve out for that there needs to be a cap on.
Yeah, we'd have to see how that's worded.
Right.
But like I said, the original
But that's a
bill would have been
study.
okay.
Also, in the homestead, the property owner has to apply to the state for the refund.
Right.
They have to pay and then get a refund. So.
Yeah, I
Comes
think we need
directly
to get
from the
this
state.
letter to us before he goes. So
Yeah. Next week.
yeah.
Commissioners, your staff will prepare the appropriate testimony for the committee. Make sure that testimony is delivered in advance of the deadline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay. Next, anything else?
Oh, I have a couple things. We're reorganizing the commission next week. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going to bring up a couple items next week, so we'll give you a heads up. Harvey County, when I was at the KAC, Harvey County, they have a chaplain and a prayer. So if they don't do a moment of silence, they'll have a local pastor come and do an invocation before their meetings. I want to bring their policy and let you look at it and see what comments would be on that.
Osawatomie does that too.
And then, of course, I'm going to bring up, as I perennially do, trying to move the public comment up to the beginning. I don't know what. And then a little adjustment to the mileage issue travel within the county. Those three items.
Travel within the county.
Yep.
So do we all, and do you have that written down, Mark, so that you know what we're going to have?
It's the mileage policy. Yeah.
We're going to.
Revisit
I'm going to
that.
bring that up.
Okay.
Just clean it up.
Anything else?
I don't have anything, Madam Chair.
Mr. Culberson, you have anything?
Nope.
Okay, well then, if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Are there anything that needs to be removed?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Carries. All right. Now, formal board action. We need to consider a motion to approve an agreement with KDOT to spray noxious weeds in the state right-of-ways in the county. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Today, for your consideration, we do have the agreement with KDOT for the noxious weed spraying within the KDOT right-of-way. This is a continuation of last year's contract. Last year, as you guys are aware, we had a very large increase in the cost of the chemicals. Those prices have currently flattened out and have not increased. We did significantly increase the price last year, although we did not spray for KDOT. So I would like to say that while this agreement has been in place and is a standard December, January type yearly agreement that comes forward to the Board of County Commissioners. We have not done any spraying for KDOT since August of 2020. As you guys know, we've had plenty of work to do within our own right-of-ways and the brush crews, and with the reduction in the amount of people we have from the inmate labor that was in the past, we aren't getting to a lot of the KDOT areas. I'm not foreseeing that changing anytime soon, but if there was a specific area that KDOT came out and made a request about, we would need to have this agreement in place ahead of time. So while I think it's important to go ahead and move this forward, I just wanted to state here today that our roads come first, and that we understand that there are 1,700 miles of county right-of-way ditches that need mowed and sprayed and taken care of, and our funding for those is limited, and we do treat those first.
State does a pretty good job of mechanical control, though. They keep everything mowed.
They mow.
So that's just as as good as spraying.
Yep.
Keeping it going to seed. But never ever going to happen that we can ask KDOT to spray our right of ways, right?
That would be nice.
Okay.
I take the mowing.
All right. Well, this is pretty standard. I move that we approve an agreement with KDOT to spray the noxious weeds in the state right-of-ways in the county.
Second.
Motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, now we need to consider a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-1 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-140 based on the findings of the golden factors as set forth in the staff report and as substantiated by the findings of fact as adopted by the Planning Commission.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Before you is a request to rezone the property located at 25341 183rd Street and 25476 187th Street from RR5 to RR 2.5. Now, this property is actually a plat, a subdivision that's already been subdivided. They went ahead and subdivided it when the property was zoned RR5, so these parcels are 5 acres or greater. They have since wanted to come back in and reapply to rezone it to RR 2.5 with the intention sometime in the future, not near future, but far future, to replat this area potentially to lots that are 2.5 acres or greater. This property is identified by the future land use map as residential 2.5 minimum acres, so it is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission did hear this request at their last meeting, and they voted 8-0 to approve the rezoning request because they felt it met all the findings of fact. So if you have any further questions, we put it in the staff report. The applicant agent is in attendance as well.
I went out and looked at this one, it's road on both sides.
Yep.
No, I don't have anything. I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-1 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-140 based on the findings of the golden factors as set forth in the staff report and substantiated by the findings of facts adopted by the Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we need to consider a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-2 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-141 based on findings of the golden factors as set forth in the staff report and is substantiated by the findings of fact as adopted by the Planning Commission.
All right. This is very similar. The request is to rezone the property at 24680 Tonganoxie Drive from RR5 and RR 2.5 to RR 2.5, the whole property. The property is currently split zoned. The western half is RR5, the eastern half is RR 2.5. This area is identified in the future land use map for residential 3 units per acre. Instead of going up to that density, they are requesting just to rezone it to RR 2.5 as the entire property. Again, the applicant agent is here today, so if you have any questions for them, they did include, I believe, a concept plan in the narrative if you had questions about their future plans there.
I went and looked at this one also yesterday.
Questions? Anything? Concerns? I'll entertain a motion then.
District.
Go ahead. I'll let
Commissioner Costas?
Yeah, it's my district.
Okay. All right. I move we adopt Resolution 2024-2 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-141 based on the findings of the golden factors as set forth by staff and is substantiated by the findings of the planning and adopted by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we need to consider a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-3 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-142 based on the findings of the golden factors as set forth in staff report and is substantiated by the findings of fact as adopted by the Planning Commission.
This request is rezone the property at 000 Gilman Road. The applicant is requesting to rezone from RR5 to R143. The comprehensive land use map has identified this area for 3 units per acre, which the R1 is compatible with. However, because there is no sanitary sewer out in this area, they would need at least a minimum of acre to have a septic system. The applicant did provide a concept plan for this, so if you had questions about their future plans, they have shown what they intend potentially to do. The Planning Commission did consider this at their last hearing, and they voted 8-0 to recommend approval of the rezone. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
I went and looked at this one also. Across the road is, the houses are on sewer, but it's a sewer lagoon system, so.
Yeah, it is on a sewer district. Last I was aware of it, that sewer district is full and could.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
no,
this
you
could go on sewer district. I'm just saying that it fits the character of the neighborhood. I mean, there's small lots across the street.
I just don't like engineered septic systems on 1 acre, but that's okay. It's just
Well, maybe Lansing will punch a sewer line out there to Bernard Park someday, and maybe we can all jump on it.
As soon as we start printing that money.
There you go. All right. I move that we adopt Resolution 2024-3 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23142 based on the findings of the golden factors as set forth in the staff report and substantiated by the findings and facts as adopted by the Planning Commission.
Second.
motion is second. Any further discussion? Okay, begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we need to consider a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-4 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-146 based on the findings on the golden factors as set forth in the staff report and is substantiated by the findings of the fact as adopted by the Planning Commission.
All right. This request is to rezone 0000 171st Street from RR5 to R143, again, 1 acre lots. This property is identified by the future land use map as 3 units per acre again. However, there is no sanitary sewer near this property, so the 1 acre minimum is what they would need to do to develop. They did provide a concept plan with their application. The Planning Commission did consider this at their last meeting and voted to recommend approval 8-0.
This one too.
Anybody have any concerns, questions? I still just think that we need sewer lines instead of septic systems, but that's just fine.
Yep.
And maybe by the time this one's done, they'll be out there because, you know, they got sewer on 163rd Street.
Right. I just,
You know,
I agree.
Actually, they're upgrading the lift station on 163rd, I believe, right now. So,
I agree, Vicki.
okay, well,
I guess this one is actually mine.
it is your district.
All right. I move that we adopt Resolution 2024-4 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 23-146 based on the findings of the Golden Factors as set forth in the staff report and is substantiated by the findings in the facts and adopted by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Let's see. Now we need to consider a motion to review and consider the Tonganoxie Road water main relocation agreement. Mr. Van Paris, do you have something for us to?
Yes, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. You may recall that the Board previously considered this topic and approved an agreement with Rural Water District Number 9 for the 3 areas of relocation that appear to be required for this road safety improvement project. Unfortunately, perhaps through a misunderstanding, after your approval of the agreement, which was represented as being an offer, a subsequent agreement was presented by Rural Water District Number 9 that does have some substantive changes, and I'll go through them if I could. By the way, you have before you the agreement that was resubmitted by Rural Water District Number 9, has apparently been approved by Rural Water District Number 9, and the exhibits.
Now you said apparently, or has it been?
I believe it has been, but since I wasn't present, I'll just say it was apparently approved.
Okay.
It's represented to us, it has been approved. And the copy was delivered to the Office of Public Works by the business manager of Rural Water District Number 9 last Monday, or last Tuesday. In any event, the 4 changes, or 3 changes that I've referenced, in Section 2 on page 2 of the agreement, the prior agreement had a cap or a not-to-exceed cost of the estimated cost of roughly $80,000. As amended and presented to you this morning, the $80,000 is referenced as set forth in exhibit as an estimated cost. Now that figure has not changed from the prior agreement's estimated cost. The difference is that it's not a not-to-exceed factor anymore. That in and of itself, quite frankly, is not fully objectionable. It's your experience, Public Works experience, that the prices of materials changes generally upwards, and that some cost overruns in projects between the estimated cost and the final cost can be expected. The real difference here is without a fixed cost item and without any requirement for competitive bidding of this project, I cannot give you any assurance that that $80,000 estimated cost is a firm figure. Now, the agreement does provide that Rural Water District Number 9 will provide you with detailed accounting of all expenditures, which will be reviewed by your staff. And of course, under the Kansas False Claims Act, if any entity submits a bill to you that contains costs that are not proper or beyond question, then there are legal remedies available. However, I have to tell you, the prior agreement had a not-to-exceed clause. This references an estimated cost, again, which in and of itself is not particularly objectionable. It's just that a rural water district is not required to use competitive bidding in these projects. The second issue is in Section 4 of the agreement, also on page 2, and that deals with the review of the bills submitted by Rural Water District Number 9. The proposed clause as submitted to you this morning states that if you wish to contest a claim submitted by Rural Water District Number 9, you may do so. Detail the basis for your contest, submit that to Rural Water District Number 9. Their board of directors and their engineer, who's a licensed engineer under the licensure of the state of Kansas, would review that contest and make a determination whether your contest was valid. Now, again,
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
No further comment on that. However, I think there are protections available to you under Kansas law if an untoward or unjustified cost were submitted to you for payment. And if that unfortunate event were to occur, you could exercise those legal protections. But at the current time, Basically, if you wish to contest a portion of a bill, you submit it to Rural Water District Number 9 and their engineer, who again is a licensed engineer, and they would make a determination whether that cost was valid under the cost estimates as provided under the agreement. The third issue is, and this is quite frankly what concerns me the most, is that the prior agreement had a fixed date for the relocation of the facilities of Rural Water District number 9 from the three areas of the project that are being undertaken by the county. The proposed agreement before you this morning states that the relocation would take place within a reasonable amount of time. I'm not an engineer, not versed in construction, but have had discussion with Public Works, and it's their opinion that these relocations, these three relocations, should be reasonably done prior to the date of May 1st. May 15th, that is required for the county to proceed on this project, one, to improve the safety of that road, two, to be able to improve the safety of that road through the use of grant funding rather than taxpayer dollars to the citizens of Leavenworth County. It would be incumbent upon the county, particularly Department of Public Works, to coordinate with Rural Water District number 9 on that relocation and to monitor the progress of Rural Water District number 9 to, as best as can be done, ensure that that relocation is finalized on or before May 15th, preferably well before the deadline of May 15th. Because if they're not out of the way, and we can't certify that they're out of the way, it causes problems with the entirety of the project. I'd also point out Leavenworth County, the taxpayers in Leavenworth County have already invested approximately $123,000 in this project, aside from the substantial amount of staff time through the payment of eminent domain awards that were undertaken to facilitate this project. So we have a deadline date of May 15th to be able to proceed with the project. We have substantial investment by the taxpayers in this project at the time. There's an identified need for this project to improve public safety along this roadway. But there are three items, as I listed to you earlier, with respect to the agreement that's before you this morning, as opposed to the agreement that you previously approved. That's a policy decision to be reached on your part. However, on the balance of things, I would suggest to you that there is a need to proceed with this project, to give them, by them I mean Rural Water District number 9, formal notice that they can proceed to effect the relocation, get it done well in advance of May 15th, and let this project proceed. But again, the project would be done without competitive bidding. There is no fixed amount, and there is no fixed date. I would suggest to you, however, there are certain legal remedies that are available to you. I am hopeful that the exercise of those remedies would not be necessary.
It doesn't look like it's that big of a job. There shouldn't be too much problem getting that moved.
As one of the exhibits, I believe Exhibit A shows, there are three areas delineated in red that show. And again, I'm not an engineer, but they appear to be rather limited.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem.
Shouldn't be. And unfortunately, we are under a time constraint. We cannot continue to drag this out because
Grant funding.
of the grant funding that is available to us that has to be used before the 15th. So we are under a time constraint. Otherwise, we might be able to work out different types because some of our water districts are really easy to work with and others not so much. And so this has been a very difficult process with this water district for two projects. And so...
Commissioners, the estimate that was provided by the Water District. We did not challenge the estimate in any way. Their engineer prepared the estimate, and we agreed to it. That was the last agreement, the first agreement that you all approved. And they had that they would have it moved out of there in a certain time frame. Without what I call language in here that is almost a blank check. Now, I don't think it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars change, but certainly there's no checks and balances here. And this is the problem that we run into time and again with certain rural water districts. We just entered into an agreement with them, a much more significant agreement without that language, and then they came back with this language, knowing full well that we're under the gun and we have to move forward if we want to keep that grant funding. So the people who represent the water district are also residents of the county, residents of that area, and we would hope that they would take into consideration that the safety of this roadway is our main concern, and we're trying to fix that through grant funding, that without that grant funding, the taxpayers of this county would have to pay. And they're putting us in a position where we could potentially lose that grant funding and then make the taxpayers pick up the full tab versus the state grant. So I think the commission, you have options here today. You can approve it as presented, no matter how distasteful the language may be to you, so that we don't lose the grant funding. You could direct staff to provide amendments that we previously had to see if they would reconsider, but that may delay this project past the deadline that we have. Or you could just say, from now on, we're not going to do projects where water districts refuse to use standardized language that we provide. I think all those are a challenge, but it's a policy decision the board needs to make today.
Well, Representative Johnson also is going to introduce legislation on this type of deal, so we probably better go to Topeka or submit written testimony on this bill.
Support that.
On his house.
Trying to
Right.
change, all the other utilities have to use competitive bidding. I don't know if
And it's
that.
only needs competitive bidding when it's a road project or tax dollars.
Right, tax dollars. I'm just saying that,
I mean,
Well, competitive bidding is good government.
yes,
And you don't have to take low bid.
you can just qualify.
That's right.
Make the most qualified.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. All right.
Well, do you have any other questions or discussion?
I think you know what we need to do, but I got to abstain.
Anybody want to make the motion? If not, I will.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I move to review and consider the Tonganoxie Road Water Main Relocation Agreement and approve the agreement as submitted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
No.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Abstain.
2-2.
That would
So
be
that's a
the
no.
motion fails.
Motion fails.
I have to abstain.
So,
I move that we resubmit the agreement with staff making the changes.
even with the risk of,
I think we still have a little
Losing the
time.
grant funding.
We have a little time.
Commissioner, I'd remind you, Rural Water District Number 9 Board of Directors meets once a month. So for your staff to redraft this agreement, submit it to you for your review, possibly as early as next week, and then submit it to Rural Water District Number 9, I would say it involves at a minimum a 30-day delay, possibly a 60-day delay.
Well, they are well capable of calling a special meeting. I used to be the chairman of Rural Water District 13.
that doesn't mean they will.
Well, if they,
Just,
They don't care whether they're
right, they don't.
It's not going to benefit them.
I think the problem I have is just that one lane. I know, David, you said number 3 was yours. Mine was the one with the open checkbook. I mean, if I had language in there where it wouldn't exceed a certain amount, then I probably could live with that. But just to say they're going to review what we said, and they're going to make the decision on what we said. I mean, what kind of kangaroo court is that? I mean, there needs to be something in there with a little bit more bite. And I think Commissioner Stevens is absolutely right, and Commissioner, our Madam Chair is right. They don't have to call a meeting, but it's in their best interest that they do, and see that we can tighten this up a little bit. I don't want to see us lose that grant funding, but people in that area should be a little upset on what's occurring out here.
and if we submit our final bottom line, then all they've got to do is accept.
Or reject.
Or reject.
Well, they could, but we've got to come to what our bottom line is.
If they even come back with a counter, I'd look at it. But just to leave it blank
But if
bothers me.
if they return to us exactly with, saying,
Yeah,
no,
at the
this is
beginning.
it.
Well, that's a problem.
I know.
And so I'm just saying that you're,
Can't lose this fund.
we cannot lose this grant funding. That's the bottom line. The taxpayers cannot afford to pick up the tab, or shouldn't be asked to pick up the tab. I mean, we have an opportunity to receive grant funding that probably far exceeds what we're arguing over right now.
Well, let's do this.
It's unfortunate.
I agree. Could we see what we can do, and let's bring it back in front of this board for another vote. I don't want to lose it either, but I'd like to have some more communication just to see what the staff has to say and the attorneys have to say, and call for a vote on it again next week.
Next week?
Yep.
As long as it's next week.
Commissioners, I cannot assure you that we would have, a position to restate to the Water District without your prior review, which would be next week, or when we would hear a response from them. So
We probably need to take a position to take to them.
Well, my position is that our counselor has given us remedies that we can use were there to be excessive, amounts of change from the 80,000 that was not reasonable based on the cost of materials and things, that are reasonable, that we have a remedy that we can avail ourselves of in order to redress that. And then they're going to be put in a position of having to justify that they're, I don't know what the word is that's going to be polite, but that we can't bill more than what is reasonably billed, to pay for something. So we can't, be excessive. They can't either technically. And so they are in violation of existing laws if they do. So
I still think we could have some correspondence, and if nobody responds back to David or Mark, then we still can bring that back next week for another vote.
Did you say?
Give us some time to think about this.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you say that not to exceed language was in the County Road 30 agreement? That's in. So they've already agreed to that type of language.
In a separate project.
So we could just approve the agreement, but inserting the language of not to exceed
They
the
still have to.
80,000.
it still has to be approved by them.
I understand that, but then we've taken a position, and all they got to do is sign.
We're not. David?
Commissioners, I loathe to do things off the cuff. However, because the county already has substantial sum invested in this project, there is a time deadline for this relocation to occur, and this matter has been moving with glacial speed through negotiations. If I could offer this suggestion, if you wish to submit a counter proposal to Water District Number 9, your staff could probably submit one to them within a week, within a couple of days, with this provision. In Section 2 and Section 3 or 4, modify them to provide that the cost estimate of $80,000 some odd dollars, has been prepared. That in the event the cost estimate were to exceed 10% or more of that amount, that prior to the initial expenditure of those expenses, the district would confer with staff of the county, et cetera, to try to move this forward.
I agree. That's what I'm looking for is a number, Dave. Something to lock it in. I don't have a problem with that.
I think that 10% is what we try to do on our projects, on small projects.
So that falls right in line.
I think that would be reasonable to say.
Yeah, that's what we do anyway.
10% of the.
Yeah.
And we could try to have that over to them in the next day or two and see what we hear back, and then bring it to review next Wednesday.
That's what I'd like to say.
However, we will probably, in all likelihood, not have an agreement signed by their board of directors.
I know. Gives me time to think about it still, though. So I'd like to go with that if everybody else is okay with it.
The other thing I'm not trying to delay this in any way because it has been going on for over a year. I think that moving date is important to us because that also jeopardizes our funds.
Right.
Correct, Bill? Yes. So I think that as important as having a limit on what our expenditures might be, we need it moved by that date as well. So
I think
we have to have that.
Us more.
I think we have to have that language.
The language where it won't be, we'll get to it as soon as we can, but it will be moved by.
It will be moved
by May 15th.
As long as it's moved by that date. That's
right.
What we're looking for, right. What's that date again?
The 15th.
May 15th.
But I think I'm
well,
one of those
let us
who says
verify
that
date.
forward.
Can Can you also have us then include that language as well?
That sounds-
The moved by the date that's our drop dead date.
Sounds like a plan. And then if that doesn't come to fruition next week, we can discuss with our other, I'm not going to let, personally, I'm not going to let this fall through the cracks, even if we have to take some other kind of action to make sure it happens. But I'd
We'll
like to
also
see
look
something
to
next
see
week.
when if they meet January.
But bottom line, the utilities are either out of the way or they're not.
Yeah.
Right, and they're
if
fully
not,
aware.
we lose our funding.
Yeah.
And they are fully aware that we have these deadlines in place. That's one of the reasons they're
I know. I know.
So the thing is that makes anything that they do to delay that project past that date is intentional. And
And the
Okay.
problem is, for them and for all of us, is that's right in their community, right in their backyard, benefiting them. I mean, this is benefiting the county.
the people
We
in
need to
that-
work together on this, and we need to be reasonable. And they've already signed an agreement with similar language. It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So we'll discuss it again next week. Is that the consensus?
It is with me.
Commissioners, staff will prepare a counter proposal based on the general terms as discussed this morning, submitted to their engineer and council for consideration. See what we hear back and bring this matter to you again next Wednesday.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Yep.
Well, yeah, we'll get it to them.
But that doesn't mean anything. It's just,
You're right.
I just say, if they don't have it done in time, we move it for them. They don't get to delay the progress at that point because they know.
Crank up the
I'm
bulldozers.
sure we have other legal remedies.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with next week, Mike.
Okay.
And commissioners, I'll offer that, yes, you have various legal remedies that go all the way back to the agreement that you approved 2 weeks ago. However, the time constraint
Understood.
cannot be moved.
Understood?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll finish with that. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bill. Now, presentations and discussion items. We're going to discuss the City of Tonganoxie annexation. So, come on, Misty, and what's the council's? Would she like to come and sit just in case there's?
Come on down.
Come on. Come
Welcome.
and see. Yes, please.
Didn't want to be presumptuous.
No, that's
Good morning,
fine. That way you're
Commissioners.
sitting and not having to stand up at the podium.
Commissioners, this is Anna Kristolich, who is the city attorney for Tonganoxie here today. And I believe this morning you got an email from Mr. Porter at the city of Tonganoxie announcing that last night they passed a resolution asking the county to make the considerations regarding the annexation. So Ms. Kristolich is here to answer any questions, and we have this.
I just have one question for I guess for you or both of you. But so the resolution that's being proposed that will accommodate your understanding what the statute requires.
That's correct. There was some discussion with the city, and as they stated in the resolution, they went ahead and passed their resolution last night asking for the county to make the findings on the annexation.
Okay.
And we'll put that on the agenda then to do so.
Next week.
Once we receive it from the city, just like last time, it'll be put on your agenda. You have a certain number of days to approve it.
Okay.
And I do have an original certified copy that I brought with me that I would leave here.
So it'll be submitted. That sounds very good.
Sounds good.
I like
We
it when
can't take
things
action on that today.
move ahead.
No.
Yep. So
I
next
also
week-
understand there had been a question
I don't
about a
think so.
map, and we don't have one attached to the current resolution, but I'd be happy to provide one separately if that would help.
Okay.
That'd be
So
great.
we'll handle it next week.
Well, it may not be next week.
Well, we'll handle
but
it.
we will handle it.
It's coming up.
as
Right.
timely as we can. We
Okay.
still have to have it reviewed by our
Right, that's what I thought.
surveyor and so on to make sure
Okay,
that it's all work.
okay.
But, yeah,
But we're all-
same process we went
As
through
we
last
used
time.
before.
Yep.
But we're all in
Yeah.
agreement now, so we
What-
move forward.
What kind of time constraints are you under, the city of Tonganoxie?
We're not under any particular time constraints. We understand that the initiation of all of this was Evergy's desire to
Right.
build a substation. So they have time constraints, but we obviously want to make sure everything is done and that there aren't any questions or concerns, and so we want to address that. So, yes, we would prefer sooner than later, of course. The statute does specify 30 days.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Nope. Okay, well, thank you for coming in to answer questions and to bring the copy to us. Appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, other presentations and discussion. We don't have the person that signed up for public comment at the end of the meeting. So, Commissioner Stephen, you have anything to share?
Well, I'm going to go on the 11th to the Capitol, Jeff, and that's about all. Oh, I'm speaking at the library that night on the 11th. So the 11th is going to be a busy day.
Stephen, you have?
Did you guys get a copy of the Baser letter supporting LAVTR now? I don't know if we put one in your box, so I was going to share that with you guys.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
So they originally came out
Against it.
Good. So now they've officially
That's good.
resolution number 2331 in support of restoring LAVTR.
Get a copy of that. That's great, Joe.
Good.
Originally supported it, then didn't support it, and now we're back supporting it.
In writing.
Right.
Well, the property tax issue is not a one
It is a
piece
complex.
pie. It's multiple pieces.
Yep. And anything that is done to assist with that is a
Absolutely.
move in the positive direction.
Especially when you start getting the
Keep
correct
your legs
information.
even on that three-legged stool.
Yeah. But especially when you start getting the correct information out, and so people can look at it, then they start taking, hey, wait a minute.
Well, and I think that's in direct relation. The reason I brought this up was this is in direct relation to the letter we sent out with the tax bill.
Tax day.
Sure
Had
is.
several meetings with Baser citizens and explained to them what happened,
Well, you
and
have.
they all said we don't understand why they did that, so we'll talk to them, and evidently they did. So I thought that was a positive.
That's a biggie. I like that.
That's all I have.
I don't have anything, Madam Chair.
I don't have
I don't
anything.
either.
So I'll
All
entertain
day.
a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you very much.